Every puzzle has an answer.
I always hear that the novel is superior to the anime, so for a change, I said, why don't I make a video about the things the anime did better than the novel? You know, making a video praising the novel is easy, but I think an interesting approach is to look at the exclusive changes the anime made that fit well with the essence of the work, to the point that they are even much better than the canonical information we have in the novel so far. In this video, I'll just make a compilation of the best changes the animated version made, changes that I genuinely believe enhance the experience. After all these changes were supervised by the author, so it's not surprising that Teppei Nagatsuki took advantage of this adaptation to improve certain points he previously touched on in the light novel's release. Welcome to 3's Re-Zero Season. 3's anime beat the novel. Something good that Season 3 did was make the characters more memorable. While I love and understand the ideas the author has planned regarding his protagonists in certain parts of the story, it's different to read a character's description in the novel versus simply seeing it brought to life in a visual medium, not just with the help of the voice actor, but also with the direction the director has planned for the tone of the production in general. Of course, I know the director is the one who gathers and gives coherence to the worldview they have of the novel, but if I start mentioning every single person involved in the production, I'd never finish. That said, special mention to Kenichiro Suehiro, who is in charge of the musical pieces you've heard in every season of Re:Zero, and also another special mention to Haruka Sagawa, who is the person who has made the most faithful character designs to date. The characters from Season 1 and 2 have their charm, but they aren't as close to the original design, at least not to the level that this great artist achieved. I wonder if the decision to increase Emilia's bust size came from her or from someone else, maybe from someone higher up in the organization. Anyway, I think I got a little off topic. The idea I had of the original Capella in the novel is that she was a but just a and nothing more. Now, after seeing the anime, I'm not saying she's a wretch who needs understanding, but I can say she's a villain with some charisma, and her capricious antagonist attitude suits her perfectly. I think it was a good move by Teppei to make each archbishop have a particular way of speaking. In Betelgeuse's case, you notice this every time he adds the word desu at the end of his expressions. While with Gluttony, whenever they speak, they tend to speak in the plural. But Capella's distinctive form is that she always adds the word kia at the end of her sentences. This is a silly thing, I know, but it's a silly thing. I didn't notice until I saw the animated adaptation. I had to watch the anime to be aware of this detail. Another character that I consider the seasons adapted a part of, well, is Anastasia. The style of the first season didn't help her much as it gave her a more childish appearance. I know she's a petite girl, but Anastasia's Season 1 design simply exaggerated this. I think the current Anna better represents that description. But that's it for this part. Let's move on to the next point of the video. This might be an unpopular opinion, and that's because I always hear people bashing the anime for the things it omitted, but I don't hear that it was good they omitted certain things, or that certain anime-exclusive scenes fit better with the overall narrative of the work, even better than the official novel canon. For example, I consider Reinhardt's addition in episode 15 to be great, and that's because it was a bit weird that in the novel, Reinhardt said he was going to help the others, but we never saw him again after that. So, giving us a scene of what he did after fighting with his family was interesting, but it's much more interesting when we see his expression. Remember that this version of Reinhardt is coming from an argument with his family, a family that blamed him for putting his duty as a knight above them. And when Reinhardt shows up at this moment, telling the healer he'll do the duty that Felix expects of him, well, it just shows the knight is still suffering for having chosen duty over his family. Extra points to the anime, because this entire sequence is animated without showing us the knight's eyes. I like to believe they avoided animating his eyes to better represent the dissatisfaction Reinhardt has with the decision he previously made. Another scene that has the same undertones, and which I couldn't add to my analysis of Season 3 because I didn't know where to place it without it seeming forced, is Garfield's scene at the beginning of the season, specifically in Episode 3. Let me give you some context. This scene I'm about to show you happens right when the witch cult's first broadcast is announced, and the entire population is evacuating. Then Garfield runs into his mother, who says her children aren't with her because they had gone out early to play somewhere in the city. Also, to make matters worse, she says her husband was also at the city hall, the place that had just been taken over by the cult. I consider this moment interesting, And that's because it manages to show Garfield's conflict well at this moment. You see, Garf is someone who values Subaru a lot and is aware of the affection he has for Amelia. So in this moment of need, he wants to go help them. But that doesn't mean he should set aside the safety of his mother's new family. That's why using the following frame to represent this indecision really gives you something to think about. In this frame, we see a couple in love and a happy, united family in the background. The couple in love would represent Amelia and Subaru, and the happy family represents his mother's new family. Garfield being hesitant in the middle of all this implies that he doesn't know who to go and help first. An important addition, and one that was key, is the sequence where the characters are having breakfast with the others. In the novel, it's mentioned that the love ballad of the Sword Devil starts playing in the background, but that's it. It doesn't mention what the lyrics are about, it doesn't say how long the song is or anything like that. Since at that time, trust in the anime staff wasn't that high, I was already resigned to it being a simple sequence, but no. My surprise was great when it got to that part. And this happened. The staff took the trouble to create a song, have Liliana's seiyuu record it, and then played it for that moment. If you don't remember what this song was about, the song was about what Wilhelm and Teresia's love life was like. Therefore, playing it right when the remnants of that family are trying to repair their bonds was good, very good timing. I know this might not seem like a big deal, but I'm one of those who thinks the magic is in the small details. After this, there isn't another scene worthy of interpretation like this, but perhaps we can mention all the times Subaru self-deprecated in the novel during this third season, but which the anime omitted. I think it's no surprise that Subaru still puts himself down, but I was truly grateful that in the post-speech scene, they didn't adapt the innumerable insults Subaru says to himself. In the novel, he insults himself so much that even Anastasia tells him he's an idiot and that he needs to stop. I feel that the absence of the self-deprecation scenes in this part helped maintain the heroic and cool rhythm of the moment. But something I do feel the anime screwed up was with Regulus's power, and that's because the way they represented his attacks was very bad. I don't want to go into details, as I already explained this in his PPT, but in a very quick summary, the way the anime animated his fight was incorrect. But hey, not everything can be perfect in this season, I suppose. To close this point, I want to say that Season 3 actually did a great job. Even though there is cut content from the novel that couldn't be adapted, this cut content is much less than in the first and second seasons. Oh, that reminds me, I'll be releasing the cut content from Season 1 in a few weeks, so stay tuned for that. Now let's go to the next and final point. The third and final thing I'm grateful for in general is the pacing the production decided to use. You see, in the novel, it was annoying that there were sudden changes between each front to see what was happening, but in the anime, a certain coherence was maintained. That is, if Priscilla started fighting, they wouldn't change the scene until Priscilla's fight was over. I know what the novel did isn't necessarily bad, but I feel more comfortable with this new rhythm. What I'm about to say, I don't know if it's exactly part of the pacing or has some other term in this world, but at the cost of looking ignorant, I'll say that I like the rhythm in the Garfield versus Kurgan fight. In the original novel, their fight was nothing like how it was shown in the anime. I would even rank it as worse adapted than the part where they show us Regulus's powers. And if I still say it turned out well, it's because the anime truly showed such a surprising sequence that it made me forget that none of this ever happened in the original story. In the original novel, the fight is more calculated and has a raw description of the final assault. There, we are told how Garfield manages to create a strategy to stop each of his opponent's 8 arms, while the anime throws all of that out the window to create its own version of what happened. I could write a multi-paragraph explanation saying how far they strayed from the original description of the fight, but that would be beating around the bush for something that can simply be summarized as, this animation sequence by Vincent Chansard was magnificent. It was so good that it makes me ignore the canonical content and be satisfied with the result. I always said that the shonen fighting style doesn't fit in ReZero. But after seeing that sequence, I'm considering that I might have been wrong with my words. But even with all the praise I can give to the Garfield vs. Kurgan fight, I consider there was something else that was far above all of this. And I say this in all seriousness, I'm talking about Liliana's sequence. Wait, before you boo me, let me explain. I really like Liliana's sequence, and I like it a lot even when it's not faithful to the original material. I know I said the same thing about Garfiel's fight, but here comes the detail that changes everything. Many scenes in Liliana's sequence were things that didn't happen in the novel, but even though they didn't happen, that doesn't mean the canonical Liliana wouldn't do those things. The anime's Liliana put a bag on her head when reuniting with her parents years later in a city, but the novel's Liliana didn't. She just decided to walk straight ahead without covering her face, and she did that because she has a different history with her parents. You see, Liliana's parents in the novel aren't as neglectful as in the anime. In the original material, they love their daughter very much, and that's why they pretend to be hard on her in order to encourage and inspire her to fulfill her dream. They're somewhat like Kenichi with Subaru, who is hard on him, but not because he's detached from him, but because it's his way of encouraging him. The fact that the anime's Liliana puts a bag on her head is something I quite like because it's something the novel's Liliana would have done too. I affirm this with absolute confidence, and that's because just as her parents chose weird methods to encourage her dream, she also chooses weird methods to communicate to them that she is trying hard and won't give up on her path. She ran away from home because she wanted to be a famous singer, but since she hadn't achieved it yet, well, she didn't feel worthy of speaking to her family again. Of course, I know there are better ways to show this resolution to your family, but Liliana is Liliana, so she chose to resolve this in the way her character would. On top of that, the following sequence where they show us how Liliana awakens the conditions to activate her power is nice, but it doesn't end there. Instantly, the novel shows us how Liliana strengthens her power in this part of the story by leaning on the second person who helped her the most after her parents, Kiritaka. Through the text in this part of the novel, it's made clear that it was his presence that made her able to improve her power so she could help Priscilla beat Sirius. The anime represented all of this, but it didn't do it with as much wordiness as I've used so far. Instead, it just summarized all the author's descriptive paragraphs with this simple scene. It's right after this push that the singer manages to meet the conditions for Priscilla to be able to land the final blow on the Archbishop. I know I docked points from the Garfield vs. Kurgan scene because I said that, in the end, I didn't like that they had invented a complete sequence. But if I don't rate Liliana's scene the same way, it's simply because I feel that the way they invented Liliana's life was in a way more faithful to the general tone of the work. I would say that while the Garfield vs. Kurgan fight sequence was set by respecting and drawing inspiration from the essence of other shonen, Liliana's sequence didn't need that. That internal conflict she had, that struggle with self-discovery and perseverance, gets closer to the heart of the series. After all, it's a theme Re:Zero constantly revisits. To sum up, I ranked Liliana's scene higher because I feel those anime original scenes fit better with the story's dramatic tone. This is unlike the shonen invention of Garfield vs. Kurgan, which I feel strays too far from what I love about the novel. But anyway, I hope you liked this brief video on the things the anime did better than the novel. Although I'll probably be questioned about the video because of the Liliana part, I'd ask you to leave a comment. It might not cost you much to make one, but one published comment can be the difference between a video with low views and a successful one. I hope you liked this old video. At the time, I forgot to save the project and couldn't bring it to this channel, but I asked the editor to redo it. Now tell me, what do you think the anime did better than the novel?